What are sports in which the athletes are not healthy? Write in the comments what you think about this. Enjoy the show. Story 1. I guess almost any sport can be unhealthy if you take it too far, whether it hurts your joints, bones, brain, or any other organs in the long run. If you take it to an extreme level, you'll have to make compromises in long-term health. IMO. The better question is which sport doesn't negatively affect you if you do it at world-class level. Story 2. Everyone seems to mention combat sports, but in a different vein, cycling can be super unhealthy. They obsess JV or calories since the lighter you are, the easier it is to cycle uphill. A famous example of just how bad this can get is a pro cyclist just started his puberty at 25 years old because he was so underweight before, his body just could not start it earlier. The only reason he started it now is because he gained 20 kilos to become a different kind of racer. Story 3 depends on your definition of healthy. I once heard a sports physician compare elite track and field athletes to racehorses. His opinion was that many operate at the ragged edge of peak performance and endurance so that they have no reserves left to fight even the smallest bug or injury. Story 4. All sport on professional level is unhealthy to the body because the athletes are actively pushing their body over its limits continuously. It may not be unhealthy as in they are too heavy with clogged up arteries, but it certainly is asking too much from their bodies. For example, their joints and the heart usually suffer from it. Story 5. Any sport that involves hitting your head. Even in football, if you repeatedly hit the ball with your head in long term, it will affect you. Your skull is there to prevent the mushy stuff from bruising. If you look for intentional bruising your mushy stuff, you will eventually pay the price. Story 6. Honestly, I don't think most professional or Olympic sports are healthy for anyone in the long term. Obviously, when these athletes are in their primes, they're physically able to do things that 99.9% of people will never be able to do, but it comes at a price. The wear and tear that these people are putting their bodies through can't be understated. High-impact sports like football, rugby, and hockey will carry pretty devastating results for brain injuries, not to mention combat sports such as MMA and boxing, where the goal is to literally inflict as much damage as possible on your opponent. Even sports where there's less contact like soccer and basketball can have impacts on long-term health. Research is just starting to be done now on how heading a soccer ball can cause long-term brain damage, along with the constant ligament tears and fractures that they deal with. Any basketball fan that watches the Inside the NBA regularly will know that Charles Barkley, who was one of the most athletic players of his generation, has noticeable issues just walking normally due to all the impact his lower body took. This is all without even taking performance-enhancing drugs into consideration, which allows athletes to further push their bodies past their natural limits and put even more stress on themselves. While the athletes might be healthy for a short period of time, I think the effects of the incredibly demanding training and competitions they have to endure create a net negative for long-term health and longevity. Story 7. Strongman. Consuming all the food to sustain the mass they need taxes the body a lot. High doses of testosterone also puts a strain on the body. They especially have high blood pressure, both from the testosterone and their body weight. Kidney and liver damage is not unusual either because of the amount of food they consume and some of the steroids they take. Some are healthier than others. For example, Mitch Hooper does a lot of cardio and is probably at the forefront of trying to sustain his mass in the healthiest way possible. Hafthor took a break from strongman and did boxing for a few years, largely because of health implications of weighing 400 pounds, doing a lot of testosterone and eating like an animal. He came down a lot in weight and it did him good. Now he is back to his old ways though. Story 8. In my view, some sports can be tough on health. For example, professional wrestling can cause joint pain. Extreme sports like base jumping can lead to serious injuries. Weightlifting and bodybuilding may harm health through extreme dieting or drug use. Combat sports can result in head injuries and brain damage, and gymnastics can lead to joint problems and injuries, especially in young athletes. Story 9. Top fuel or funny car drag racing. What the sudden takeoff does to your insides and eyes. One driver said from the start your eyes go blurry from it being pushed back in your head. The negative G's from the parachute is also hard on your body. Story 10. High school wrestling is basically a sanctioned eating disorder with athletics attached. I'm a teacher and I went to high school at a school with a strong wrestling program. The wrestlers I've known are starving themselves all year to move into lower weight classes. The state I went to high school in put restrictions on how much weight a student could lose over the course of a season, and it just made the kids cut weight for more of the year. Now they're cutting harder in preparation for that first weigh-in and then still cutting throughout the season. Story 11. Bodybuilding. Between the crazy workload of working out, Going from bulking intensely to calorie deprivation, intense cardio, and all the substances that come along with it. It's terrible for your mental and physical health. There are absolutely healthy and happy bodybuilders. However, the sport competition is rife with body dysmorphia and other issues. Story 12. Others have mentioned it already, but definitely bodybuilding. And it's not just because of the steroids involved. The dieting and training aspects are often overlooked. Even worse is the potential negative impact on mental health due to the idea of having to look a certain way to win a plastic trophy. Obviously, there's a big difference between being a competitive, amateur or professional bodybuilder and a gym rat that chooses to follow the lifestyle. Bodybuilding, as a practice, can be healthy. It's when it's taken to extreme measures, mainly with the intent of competing, that it can become seriously unhealthy. Story 13, I've read ballet is actually brutal. Eating disorders are common, and ballerinas are encouraged to keep dancing until they're injured. Plus, like a lot of sports, only a tiny few will ever be prima ballerinas. It's not worth throwing away their childhood for an unlikely possibility. Story 14. Specify what you mean by not healthy, because an argument can be made for every single athlete doing long-term damage to their bodies. They may have a higher peak than your average Joe, but over a lifetime, end up less healthy in many areas. The training regimens they go through and playing through injuries, painkillers, surgeries, brain issues for impact sports, etc., are very much not in the realm of a healthy way of existing. Story 15. Bodybuilding. Even if you ignore the rampant steroid abuse, even the natural bodybuilders put their bodies through hell as they bulk, then crash diet to get as cut as possible for comps. When I was heavily into fitness, I was friends with a lot of competitive bodybuilders, and with the exception of a very select few, their bodies and minds didn't cope well at all with the cycle. Story 16. Ancient Roman gladiators. Prior to the myth perpetrated by shows like Spartacus, gladiators were not super ripped with 8 packs. They would be fed on a high barley diet, in food and liquor, and were quite chubby. There are a few reasons for this. First, the gladiator was akin to a professional sportsman who people supported. Gladiators rarely died in combat because it doesn't make sense making an investment into a sportsman to have him die in combat. They would fight, kill slaves, and condemned criminals for the mob's bloodlust. The owners kept the well-fed and looked after. Secondly, if they did sustain a wound in combat, the fat layer would mean it would likely just be a superficial wound and not damage any muscle. Think of football these days. Players go down for a simple studded food stamp. A gladiator has to be able to withstand a lot of physical punishment. Thirdly, and this is my personal view, a gladiator did not subscribe to the traditional Roman model of the godlike physique. They were essentially pimped out but equally lower-class citizens. So they were gorged on food and women and kept alive to feed the masses. They did not inhabit the environment to be shredded AF. It's all glamour muscles, and these guys were here to fight for entertainment but still survive, often long enough to buy their freedom. Fun fact, a lot of gladiators were self-admitted to pow off debts, etc. If you were heavily indebted, a choice would be to become a gladiator, gain a following, and raise the crowd enough to pay your debts off. They were basically cash cows for the elite that funded the games. Killing them or having them killed in combat was the last thing a sponsor wanted to happen. Story 17. World Tour cyclists sometimes develop super serious health conditions because of the demands of their sport. Lots of enlarged hearts and hardened arteries. Doing 4+ hours of cardio 21 out of 23 days, 3 times a year, plus all the other non-Grand Tour races, takes a toll on your body. Story 18. I don't consider it a sport, but 100% physioculturism. Permitting steroid use and terrible eating habits while also promoting building unnecessary muscle seems really unhealthy to me. Not only that, but the culture surrounding it really affects some people's mental health, including the participants. Bodybuilding is a hobby we should take very lightly when talking about health. I don't want everyone aiming to look like Minecraft Steve in the future. Story 19. I think any sports when played at an elite competitive level isn't healthy, because athletes play through pain, injuries, etc. The training top soccer players go through makes them fit, healthy. Playing through injuries isn't. Something unhealthy across the board would be sumo wrestling, I guess. You can talk about the different kinds of fat they carry on their body, but you gotta be shitting me if you're telling me it's healthy to walk around at that weight. Story 20, wrestling and MMA. Now, if you go by surface level observations, you probably think I'm crazy considering those guys are absolutely shredded. However, as someone who has experienced it, what they do is not healthy. Specifically weight cutting. I'm sure most people can probably discern that consistently dropping 20, 30 pounds in a short amount of time multiple times in a year is not healthy. Or the wrestling route of dropping 15, 20 pounds, and then forcing yourself to not eat as a way to keep yourself at that weight. I can speak from experience. The worst part about wrestling isn't losing a match. It's having to show up to practice every day while you're very dehydrated and hungry. Story 21. Most sports at a high level, you sacrifice your long-term health for short-term performance, especially joint health and brain health in contact sports. Exercise is really important for health, but no one needs to be pushing themselves to the limits of human ability. There's also a lot of uncertainty regarding the drugs and supplements that most are doing, legal or illegal. Story 22. It's very specific, but rodeo sports are hell on you. It's practically a country identity to ride a horse, let alone ride a bronco or hog tie a calf. Alongside that is smoking, drinking, getting into fights, and a myriad of other bad behaviors. Just listen to the lyrics of your favorite country song. Now think about the actual sport. You get jerked back and forth on a massively powerful animal with your buddies literally waiting to pull you out the second you get kicked off. The hog tie, one kick to the head, and you're not going to be thinking straight for the rest of your lives. There's a reason why all the rodeo riders are young, because any that got over the age of 40 had to retire. Story 23, American football. Everyone is concussed as shit and takes a beating every play. Boxing and fighting, self-explanatory. Hockey, you got to be sick in the head to be an NHL player. I have seen these guys take indescribable levels of pain and finish shifts. Broken legs, blocking shots. Goalies used to not wear helmets. People who are missing teeth look like hockey players. Story 24. Most of sports, when played in a competitive level, will fuck you up. Football = fucked knees galore. Weightlifting = fucked anything and everything that's under the weight. Bodybuilding = literally a watch suicide. Fighting =. If it's not fucked, it will be plus. Enjoy the concussions. Swimming = shoulders. Knees, fucked. Sports in general are very good as long as you don't push yourself past your limits. Realistically speaking, the pro levels are all unhealthy. If not physically, it's going to be mentally unhealthy. Look at Faker's head bashing after losing a game as example. Story 25, gaming, now esports, going to be included in the next Olympiad. Highly addictive, affects brain chemistry, and the culture around it is utterly toxic. I love gaming, but I have clearly had a problem in recent years, and it is terrible. I mean terrible for depression. There's a lot of fun and creativity involved, but it is also, sadly, a modern plague. Furthermore, it is one of the biggest revenue sources. Subscription-based payment models and pricing is through the roof. So it has a very wide negative sphere of influence. Story 26, NFL players. Dudes are mega millionaires but have a near certain chance of developing some form of CTE or incurring other brain damage. Despite retiring young, these dudes' bodies are physically beat to hell and back before they even graduated college. Story 27, NFL players, notable offensive linemen. Those guys are playing at 100 pounds over their normal body weight. The insane amount of calories they have to consume to weigh as much as they do is insane. Joe Thomas is a really good example. He'd have to eat every 2 hours and consume 10K calories a day just to stay at his playing weight. Once he retired, he immediately lost 100 pounds. Story 28. I know he's a bit of an outlier in the professional field, but golfers John Daly is one unhealthy dude. He hates water, is an obese alcoholic, crushes chocolate milk, etc. A journalist followed him around during a day at a major tournament and found his diet to be 21 cigarettes, 4 bags of Skittles, and 13 Diet Cokes, or something along those lines. Story 29, when you think about it, majority of them, they're all on insanely strict restrictive diets and training schedules. Bodyweight-based sports, the athletes are weighed practically on a daily level, and their weight is not allowed to fluctuate. Many female athletes in track and field sports and gymnastic artistic sports are required to keep their body fat percentage lower than the required amount for an average woman. A third of female athletes lose their periods. A lot of female gymnasts especially have stunted growth as they started their sport during puberty, a time when fat on the body is necessary for a teen to grow. Story 30. Y'all gotta learn the word which... The phrasing of some of these questions are fucking tortured. In answer to your question, sports in which the athletes are not healthy are A, sports, B, sports in which athletes competes, C, sports in which the athletes competing are not healthy. Did you want us to name those sports? Which sports have the most unhealthy athletes? Story 31. I think in general sports with weight classes, encourage some shenanigans to reach a specific weight in preparation for competition. Ballet has historically contributed to a lot of people's eating disorders, mine included, and I stopped as a preteen. Any sport where you're expected to have a certain kind of body will carry the risk that athletes will take unhealthy risks to reach those bodily standards. Story 32. We're all gonna die. Sometimes from cancer or a freak accident, and sometimes from accomplishing nothing at all and just living as a human. I honestly don't have an issue if people go into a fighting career knowing all of the risks while undertaking something they love to do. Tons and tons lives end in a messy struggle, whether you engage in risky behavior or not. Even something considered relatively safe and respectable as a CDL truck driver is going to give people terrible long-term problems for the rest of their lives. Or retirees who no longer do daily physical activities and they become decrepit shells of their former selves. We are a tiny blip. I'd much rather see somebody pursue a career as a fighter and died from CTE than be somebody who lived a sedentary life and ate fast food 4 times a week who died of heart disease or colon cancer. Both are horrible ends. Almost all humans have horrible ends. May as well die doing what you loved, because in the end you are your legacy, whether it be a bright flame that extinguishes quickly or one that becomes feeble and fades away. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it. Be sure to write comments and share your stories.